Who will win this war, the Roman Empire or the barbarians? In this video, the excessive growth and management difficulties that led to the collapse of the empire, its economic collapse, its military weakening, and more are discussed. All of them are answers to this question: what if Rome had never fallen? The answer may surprise you. Before we begin, I'm going to take history out of the realm of boring lessons on this channel with my own style of narration, and I'm going to ask this question about the turning points in world history. What if history had turned out completely differently? What would the world be like today? And we're off. Rome's excessive growth and management difficulties. The empire grew so large that it became impossible to govern from a single center. Communication was slow, control was weak, provinces broke away, rebellions increased. So, in your opinion, how could Rome have resolved this crisis, or could it still resolve it? Rome should have established a controlled regional administration system that preserved central authority rather than attempting to control the empire from a single center in order to resolve the administrative crisis caused by excessive expansion. The territories should have been divided into 5-6 large regions. These regions should have been administered by governors appointed by the center and subject to strict oversight, and taxes and laws should have been standardized everywhere. Regional governors should be prevented from establishing independent armies. Military power should remain entirely under central control, and commanders should be rotated frequently. Rome should have focused on strengthening internal order, the economy, and infrastructure rather than expansion, halting conquests and establishing defensible borders. Furthermore, by granting citizenship and legal equality to the people of the provinces, it should have created a society loyal to Rome and committed to the empire rather than marginalized communities. In short, Rome should have been governed not like a growing empire, but like a disciplined state with a network structure. But wait, we still have 4 more crises to go, and we'll see if Rome can weather them. Let's move on to the new crisis and watch the economic collapse unfold. Constant wars depleted the treasury, taxes rose, money became worthless, the people grew poor, and trade collapsed. Now let's see what Rome needs to do to overcome this crisis. Rome should have fundamentally reformed its economic structure to halt the economic collapse rather than attempting to save money and taxes. It should have first reduced the excessive military expenditure stemming from constant wars and conquests, abandoning the conquest economy and transitioning to a production economy. Instead of constantly devaluing the currency, it should have maintained a stable and reliable silver-gold standard and stopped printing money, which fueled inflation. It should have shifted the tax burden from the poor to large landowners and the aristocracy, and cracked down hard on tax evasion through centralized control. Reforms should be implemented to relieve small farmers, the backbone of agriculture, from debt and prevent shortages through state-supported production and storage systems. Finally, trade routes should be secured and the domestic market revitalized, transforming Rome from an empire sustained by plunder into a sustainable economic state. Rome's strength lay in its military discipline. Now let's see how Rome's strength weakened. The Roman army was no longer as disciplined as it once was. Mercenaries increased, loyalty diminished, defensive lines collapsed in the face of barbarian raids. So how should he protect the military power that was the novel's greatest asset? Rome should have focused not on increasing the size of the army to halt its military decline, but on rebuilding discipline, loyalty, and quality. It should have first reduced its dependence on mercenary and foreign soldiers and re-established a professional core army composed of Roman citizens. Soldiers' salaries and pension rights should be guaranteed to prevent them from being loyal to their commanders rather than the state. Their loyalty should be directed towards the empire itself. Commanders should be rotated frequently and kept strictly separate from the civil administration, thereby preventing coups from within the army. Instead of temporary units for border defense, permanent and well-fortified defense lines should be established, and legions should focus on external threats rather than being constantly consumed by internal war. In short, Rome had to transform the army from a tool for displaying power into a disciplined, loyal, and sustainable defense mechanism. The Roman Empire always fought on the battlefield. If it had survived to the present day, it would have had to fight on the football pitch as well. And for this, it would need disciplined, loyal, and combative players. So, what do you think the starting 11 for the Roman Empire's national team should be? Share your thoughts in the comments now. And at the end of the video, compare it with the squad I've put together. Whose squad is better? But of course, first we need to bring Rome into the modern era. And let us move on to the biggest crisis that caused all these crises to occur: internal turmoil and political instability. So why is this crisis so significant? Power struggles, coups, and frequent changes of emperor rotted the state from within. The lack of strong leadership became a major problem, and in other crises it became inevitable. So what should Rome have done? The answer is actually quite simple. Rome should have abandoned the system that vested power in individuals in order to end internal strife and political instability, and instead established a rule-based, predictable model of governance. Above all, it should have resolved the empire's greatest problem, the uncertainty surrounding the throne, by creating a clear and legal system of succession. The manner in which the emperor would be selected, when and under what conditions he could be removed from office, had to be clearly defined, thereby eliminating any basis for powerful generals to declare themselves emperor. The powers of the army, the Senate, and the bureaucracy had to be strictly separated. Military intervention in politics had to be prevented by strict laws. The Senate should have been transformed from a symbolic institution into a mechanism of balance and control, and a strong central legal system should have been implemented to prevent arbitrary rule in the provinces. In short, if Rome had been able to establish a state order based on rules rather than on individuals, it could have largely prevented its internal collapse, and other crises would not have occurred. And everything depends on this final crisis. If Rome cannot find a solution to this crisis, everything will end here. Can Rome resist the barbarian invasions? Tribes such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns invaded Roman territory. The official fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 marked the end of this process. So how was Rome supposed to prove itself in the face of these invasions? Rome should have regarded the barbarian invasions not merely as a military threat, but as a demographic and political process that needed to be managed. Instead of constantly expanding its borders, it should have retreated to natural, defensible lines, such as the Rhine and Danube rivers, and strengthened these regions with permanent fortresses, professional garrisons, and logistical centers. Instead of completely excluding the barbarian tribes, they should have been incorporated into the empire in a controlled manner, but not through haphazard settlements, but rather as federated communities subject to Roman law, with tax and military obligations. These groups should be controlled not by their own leaders, but by administrators appointed by Rome, and they should be settled in large, single blocks to prevent them from posing an internal threat. The use of barbarian soldiers within the army should have been restricted, while the Roman core army was kept strong and border defenses were transformed into a multi-layered security system. In short, if Rome had viewed the barbarians not as enemies at the gate, but as a resource that could become an enemy if not properly managed, invasions could have strengthened the empire rather than destroying it. Thus, Rome overcame all its crises, and so the answer to our main question emerged. What if Rome had never fallen? Had the Roman Empire never fallen, the greatest upheavals in world history would never have occurred, the Dark Ages would not have emerged to such a great extent, and science, law, and engineering would have progressed uninterrupted. Because Europe united under a single, powerful Roman center, centuries of civil wars and nationalist conflicts did not arise, which would have transformed Rome into an early global superpower. The discovery of America would most likely have been carried out earlier and more systematically by state-supported Roman fleets rather than by fragmented kingdoms, and the Roman provincialization model would have been applied instead of colonialism. Thanks to common law, a common currency, and a standardized trade network, global trade would have become globalized much earlier, and modern capitalism would have developed in a more orderly and state-controlled structure. Because religion was centrally controlled by Rome, sectarian wars remained limited, and the separation between science and religion was less abrupt. In short, had Rome not fallen, instead of today's multipolar and conflict-ridden world, a more orderly but less free world order centered on Rome would have emerged, one that had globalized earlier. And in Europe, it would have been like this. Today's Europe would not consist of dozens of independent nation-states as it does today, but would have become a single super-state or a loose Roman confederation made up of large provinces subordinate to Rome. Countries such as Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and England would never have come into existence. Instead, there would be Roman provinces such as Gaul, Hispania, Britannia, Italy, Roman Germania, the Balkans, and Greece. In short, had Rome not fallen, today's map of Europe would show not approximately 40 countries, but 10-15 large regions under Roman rule, and most European brands would not exist. Instead of separate national brands such as BMW, Mercedes, or Volkswagen, there would be a few large brands established by Rome. Luxury brands such as Louis Vuitton and Gucci would not belong to countries, but would be affiliated with the Roman palace. In short, instead of numerous different brands, a few but very powerful Roman brands would rule the world. And on top of that, the Roman national team would be a veritable Avengers squad. Goalkeeper, Gianluigi Donnarumma. Right back, Kyle Walker. Center backs, Virgil van Dijk and Antonio Rudiger. Right back, Theo Hernandez. Luka Modric, the imperial mind in midfield. Jude Bellingham in the box-to-box role. And as playmaker Kevin De Bruyne, Mohamed Salah on the right wing in attack. On the left wing, Kylian Mbappe. And Cristiano Ronaldo, who played like a legion commander up front, would take his place. In short, if Mediterranean technique, northern discipline, and Balkan intelligence were combined, this team would most likely become the undisputed ruler of world football. Would you prefer to live in a Roman world where perfect order prevails? Or is it in our world, along with its flaws? Don't forget to subscribe.